Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Keystone Chronicles podcast. Guys, I have a very special episode this week. I was able to sit down with a legend, Mr. Joe Humphreys, and it was just wonderful. I really enjoyed his presence. I enjoyed the stories you guys are going to hear and just being around him and the energy that he brought to the room. I want to thank everybody that was involved, his kids, Randy Aiken, and some other people behind the scenes, guys. This was really the pinnacle of where I've been with the show so far, as far as my guest, and I just really enjoyed this, and I really think that you guys will too. So we were able to go to Mr. Aikens Cabins. If you guys are unaware, I think that I have brought them up one time in another episode. Aikens Cabins are at Bear Meadows. That is located in Boalsburg, Pennsylvania. Guys, I really can't speak as highly as you need to see this place. It is just outside of Boalsburg. It is right down below the Tussey Mountain Ski Resort, and you got Rothrock State Forest right in your backyard, as well as some of the best fishing in central Pennsylvania. Okay, this place is strategically located for the guys that want to fish. I know those guys. I know they're going to love it. Randy was a great guy. I want to thank Randy so much for getting together with me, and him and my friendship, his friendship and mine, continue to grow, and it was just really wonderful to get to sit down and talk to him and Joe. So I really think you guys are going to enjoy this episode. It's not so much tactics and some other stuff, but it's really Joe talking on a lot of stories and giving a lot of wisdom to us. So really hope you guys enjoy. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Keystone Chronicles podcast. Guys, with us this week, I made a trip out here towards State College, and I couldn't be more thankful and excited to tell you that I'm sitting here with Randy Aikens, and I'm sitting here with Mr. Joe Humphrey. And we're really excited to sit down and talk together and go over some stuff. And Randy and Joe, how are you guys?
Good.
We are fine today. This is a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Turned out real nice. Almost 2 inches of rain last night.
We did. That helped the streams, didn't it? Yes, it does.
The streams definitely needed it. I attest to that at home too. And I'm excited to get back on a stream here. Probably for 2 more weeks, kind of fishing as much as I can. And then I will be in the deer woods trying to get some cameras hung and doing some deer sign and stuff like that. And I usually get back into fly fishing a little later on in the year, little end of December, especially if the weather's nice enough. Like it hasn't been very cold after Christmas time, so it's been really primed to fish this December and January. Although I know some people have told me that they've caught some of their best trout in October and September.
Well, they start to go on their spawning reds in September, October, and people do find them bigger fish because they come out of their hiding because they're spawning, and they're on their reds, and you can catch bigger fish, but it's not a good idea to take them off the reds,
Right.
So,
Definitely. Well, I want to get into a couple things here before we really get into the fly fishing, and Randy, we're sitting here at your beautiful cabins, and I can attest to how nice these cabins are because I stayed here, and I'll be back every year for sure. And I know that you and I have developed a good relationship with each other. And what is it that really made you want to put these cabins here? You have how many beautiful cabins, and kind of just what was your thoughts going into doing this?
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Joe for taking the time and for his kids. We started these in 2007, and it was sort of an inspiration along with a good friend of my father's who helped me orchestrate the process of getting these cabins together. And as I said, we have 5 of them. They're 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Each bedroom has its own private bath. And then it's a little living room, electric fireplace, all the amenities of home. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really wanted to do. And then with the surroundings, my father built the ski slope next door, which is now Tussey Mountain. And he, so it's got the draw for the kids and for adults because Rothrock State Park's right here.
Right.
And so, it's just one of those things to where if you build it, they will come, right,
Yes,
Joe?
that is true.
And I've never really advertised because, I like the word of mouth.
Right.
And everybody that stays here, will tell somebody else, and then they tell somebody else. And so it's just an onslaught of everybody saying, hey, yeah, we heard about this from a friend. And so, here we are. And it's just neat because each cabin has its own, quirks, but we have outdoor fire ring and picnic table and charcoal grill. So everybody brings their own chairs, whatever, and it's just it's sort of a nice little tucked away place. You're not right downtown.
I might make a comment too, if you don't mind,
I
Randy.
don't.
Within a 25-mile radius, we have 5 beautiful trout streams. We have the Spring Creek and Fishing Creek and the Little Juniata and so many others and mountain streams. So this is a wonderful place to stay and really relax and enjoy it after a beautiful day on the stream.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And that's exactly what we did when we came up here and camped. And I will say I didn't get to spend much time in a cabin, but my family did, and they really
Yes.
enjoyed it. But as Joe said, we're in the mecca of it. I really believe so, and I think that this area is probably, if you're a fly fisherman, this is probably one of the best places that you could ever live in Pennsylvania, to be honest. And right where your cabins are placed is almost smack dab in the middle of, in the heart of it.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, my family's been a big influence with the area for darn near 100 years. So, it's just a neat area. And then, such as Joe said, it's just phenomenal for fly fishing. And
Yes.
and I'm learning. I got a good friend of mine that helps me try to combat these ailments I have. But I love to fly fish, and this is a great spot for it. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad that you were able to have us all here to sit down for this conversation. And is there anything else you want to touch on as far as I know your family has a rich history of this area and some of its waterways.
Right. Well, as Joe will point out, his mentor was a good friend of my grandfather.
George Harvey.
Yes, sir. And so the history goes a long ways. My grandfather started the Center Daily Times.
Okay.
And so that's sort of how I'm able to be where I am. And we've since sold that in 81. We sold it. But this area is just, I don't know how else to say it. It's home. It's home.
It is home. Yeah.
It's, as you know, the Dolores and Joanna will attribute to, it's a nice spot in Pennsylvania to live. Yeah. And we just, we're thankful, or we're blessed. I am blessed with the acreage that I have to, just be able to offer it. And I wanted to get a hold of Joe and to see what his thoughts were on me doing some different things with the property.
Yeah.
And so the cabins are a good start to it.
I believe
and,
so.
So that's where I'm sort of leaning towards.
Yes. I think you're doing a great job. You're on the right track. And I know of some of the other plans, and, I don't want to put them out there for everybody to hear yet, but, everybody that's listening should really follow along what's going on here and what Randy's doing at Aikens Cabins, and really check it out for yourself, because I know we have listeners all across this state and the surrounding states. So if you guys want to come to Pennsylvania and fish here in central Pennsylvania, where it is the best, this is a great place to check out.
Right. And I'm going to keep in touch with you. Hopefully we'll somehow do a fishing lodge. I'm looking at trying to do fishing lodge on the property, and that's my goal. And we'll just take it one step at a time. That's all we can do.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but I want to thank Joe for being here and for his
Thank you
time.
for inviting me, Randy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much for giving us this time. And, we'll jump into some things with you, Joe. This is it's an honor for me, really. I've followed along a lot of your stuff and your journey throughout the time that I've known fly fishing. And I was actually talking to my pap this morning, and he was all excited. He was like, "Oh, you're really going to talk with him?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, well, tell him I see him how he does that cast, that slingshot cast." I said, "Oh,
the bow and arrow."
I said, "The
Oh,
bow
arrow.
cast." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Tell him I enjoy watching that." And my pap, he's 87, so he's a fan. He's a big fan.
Good, thank you.
He's a firecracker too. But what do you have going on, Joe? What have you been up to?
Well, at my age, I'm 94 years old, and I've been fly fishing for maybe 80 years, and every time, as life presents many problems, even in our elderly age, when I have a little bit of frustration, I simply pick up the fly rod, go to the stream, Spring Creek, or one of the nearby streams, Spruce Creek maybe. And after my first cast, my problems just disappear.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's the great way to end frustration, and with our veterans. And I've worked with so many veterans in the healing waters, and this is what happens with them after that first cast, and they get into fishing, and a lot of their problems go away, at least temporarily.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that is why I enjoy fishing so much. And sometimes, a lot of friends or family will ask me, "Hey, well, let's go fishing together." And I do enjoy that, and I appreciate having people with me. But sometimes I just like to go myself and just be in my own head and just hear the water. And one thing that's probably more exciting than anything is when you fish a new stream and you don't know it that well, and you get around the corner and you see an undercut or an eddy or something that you really want to fish, and it's exciting to get that first
Yes,
cast.
it is. That's right.
So moving into that, as long as you have been fishing, do you have a fish that you more or less would rather catch than another one? And what I mean by that is a species of trout, probably.
Yeah, but before I answer that question, when I'm fishing with people on the water, and years ago I used to do some guiding, and one of my statements to the angler that I would be with: stop and look up. Did you see that beautiful bird, that scarlet tanager? Did you see the clouds, how they're forming? Can you see in the clouds something that depicts where we are? Or can you see the beautiful trees? Can you see all the beauty that God has presented for us? And I said, and then we fish.
Right. Yeah.
But first, appreciate what you have.
Yep.
Yeah, one of my goals.
And, go ahead.
Good. No, I just wanted to say that the pileated woodpeckers up here they make me come alive just seeing them.
They do, but one thing they can do, they can tear your house apart.
Yes,
So,
they
yeah.
can. Yes, they can. But
Your question to me, Marcus, I love the brook trout. Ever since I was a child, but my first trout was a brown trout, and I was on Spring Creek in 1935. And my father took me to Spring Creek, and I had an old steel rod that telescoped out, and we had the season opened at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was still dark. And so with a flashlight, we came into a road on Spring Creek that is no longer exist, but it took us down to a place just below rock, and where the stream divided. There was a little island there, and it's still there. but the stream did divide, and it was a small portion of the stream. And I finally got a worm on my hook. I got my bait into the water, and I felt some tugs, and I flipped the fish out over my head, and he landed in the weeds behind me, and it was still dark, and I couldn't find the fish, but all at once I saw the weeds start to move, and I captured my 8-inch brown trout, which was, to me, the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And when my father was an absolute neophyte, and he got a fish on his line, he threw the rod down and pulled the fish in hand over hand with the line. So this was the early stages of it, but we put that trout in a pan at home, and I studied it, and the markings, the spots, and the orange and red spots, and the coloration of that fish just mesmerized me. I was just taken by it, and I was hooked. Mm-hmm. And so my mother made a sandwich with that little trout, and it was the best thing I had ever eaten in my life. So today I still think a trout sandwich is absolutely wonderful. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of hard for me because I'm colorblind, and so certain things stand out. Mm-hmm. And in a brook trout, and that's what I'm used to fishing, and it's just the colors in it. I mean, it's so. I'm brown and greens. I'm colorblind to the brown and greens and stuff, and just seeing the different. I just love everything about it.
Now I'm gonna tell you a story. When I was a youngster, and every morning in the summertime, without school, I would get up with peanut butter sandwiches, at least 3 of them, and a jug of milk, with my fly rod across the handlebars, my fly box in the basket. I would paddle to Spring Creek or to the mountain stream, this one or many others. But I fished every day. So one day I paddled down to Spring Creek above rock, and I was sitting on the bank having a sandwich. And an elderly man, he might have been in his 80s or 90s, came and sat down beside me. He was fishing, and I said to him, "When you were a boy, were there some really big brown trout?" And he said, "No, son. When I was a boy, Spring Creek had only brook trout." So I said, "Brook trout? Only brooks?" Yeah. And I said, "Well, were there any big ones?" "Well," he said, "some might go 2 or 3 pounds." My God, a brook trout 2 or 3 pounds. You're talking about 20 inches. Mm-hmm. So Spring Creek, as we know it now, there aren't any brook trout. Mm-hmm. And that age has gone.
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
we've had so many changes. Yeah.
We really have. And this world today is a big change. So
another little story on this with Spring Creek. Back at the end of the 1800s, at the 1890s, Theodore Gordon from New York City was challenged by a guy from Bellefonte who thought he was the best fisherman in the country, and he wanted to make a name for himself. So if he could beat Theodore Gordon on the stream, he would be a hero. So Theodore Gordon came to Bellefonte, and they fished the big springs at Bellefonte, and catching only brook trout. And Theodore Gordon caught 50-some brook trout and beat the local hero from Bellefonte, who only caught 40-some, but they kept every fish they caught.
I'll be
Good. Yeah. That's in the book of Theodore Gordon. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great
So
story.
this is Spring Creek. Yeah.
Well, I have to ask Joe, can you say a little bit about George?
Yes, George was my mentor, and I first met George Harvey when I was just a child, and I was fishing Spring Creek, and it was the down on the penitentiary grounds, and they called it the Sawmill Stretch. And that's all gone. I wouldn't know where it even is now. And I had a snelled wet fly, and the snell started to come apart. And so I went to a man fishing, and I said, "Can you help me with this?" And he says, "No, son, I can't. But that man up there fishing, he's George Harvey, and I'll bet he can help you." So I went up and I said, "Sir, can you help me with this?" And he was catching fish after fish. There was a sulfur hatch on. He was just butchering the fish, and stopped, laid his rod down, and worked on my fly, got it back together so I could fish with it, and off I went. But that was my first meeting with George Harvey. And so then, many years later, and I would see him on the stream. We both fished Spring Creek so incessantly, you might say. And so, but I would see him, and he would nod or say something or hello, but he never really bothered with me that much, even as a child. He was serious. He was a fisherman, and he fished. And so it wasn't until the 60s that we really started to pull together. And then he had, I was at Bald Eagle Area High School. I was a wrestling coach, but I also started the first fly fishing program, I think, in the state of Pennsylvania. And so we had casting and gym classes, and then across this road was the Bald Eagles Creek, and I would take them over. I would take them over and demonstrate different techniques, sometimes catching fish. And I have run into so many people over the years that remember that. Little children. One guy the other day I met at downtown, and he said, "I had you in 7th grade." And he said, "You took me fishing." And he said, "We went across and fished the Bald Eagle." And I said, "Yes, we did, yeah." And so George was seeing all this. And then he said, "Yeah, I know, Joe, I know." And then in 1959, I took his course, and I helped him. He said, "Now, there's a lot of people in this class that are really having troubles." So he says, like, helping to get the thread on the hook, helping to get the fly set up. So he said, "You help me." So I did. And so, again, he was priming me to take that position. And so in 1970, I did. Yeah.
I remember helping out. I was a controller on the fly, and I had the pleasure of being Gloria's controller.
Controller, yeah.
And that was just an experience that I can, I'll take to my days.
I think she caught a couple of trout on the Royal Coachman she fished.
Yes,
yeah.
yep, that's exactly right. And I was new to it. I mean, just being a friend of his and then fishing Gloria. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So it was, and I try to go every year and help, but yeah, I mean that's a great.
It's a great program.
Right,
and
right.
It helps so many kids.
It really does.
Big brother, big sister, so many programs, yes.
And it's instrumental of what Joe does for everybody around the area. And I'm just fortunate enough to be able to call him a friend.
Yes.
And to have him here. So, and the Humphreys family, I mean.
Marcus, do you have any other ideas? Do you have any other questions you want to ask?
So, at your age and the accomplishments and the goals, the benchmarks that you've met, throughout your life, my first question would be, when did you really want to start giving back more, like with the knowledge that you had gained and stuff? And was that because, the fishing was great, but whenever you did start giving back and watching somebody else benefit from everything you taught them?
Yes.
I guess what the question is kind of when did that start and where did that start, where you really wanted to focus on that more than yourself fishing the stream?
Well, I started at a very early age in doing fly fishing shows, and I've met so many people and so many needy people that really wanted to get into the game or had been in the game and had problems, and so and fishing as much as I did, I met so many people on the stream that needed some help.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
Yeah.
didn't you do the ESPN?
I did 8 shows on ESPN.
The original.
Yeah. The original.
You and Dolores were,
Yeah.
So,
and I had Dolores in the show.
right,
Yes.
right. I remember that, and then I don't remember that, but
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty cool.
And so on a stream, even at my age, trout present many problems because you never have this game cornered. The good Lord made it that way. And so you have to adjust all the time. And in adjusting, we learn, okay? But we also learn from others. And so, an example, every year I have a busload of children coming from Windward, Pennsylvania, and they're 5th graders, and they're 10 years old. And I have them on the stream. And I first teach them to cast, and then in the afternoon, I take them on the stream. And one little boy, he was only in 1st grade. And what was his name? Adrian. So Adrian says to me, he said, "Do you want to catch fish for us today?" And I said, "Yes, Adrian." He's only 6 years old. So he said, "You're going to fish a woolly butter. You're going to fish it downstream. You're going to fish it real slow." And he says, "And then you'll catch fish for us." Well, I said, "Thank you, Adrian." So I'm on the stream, and I have 23 kids behind me. And I miss a trout. And I say to the children, "I am going to fish down through, and then I'm going to come back and see if I can catch this fish." And so I came back, I fished down through, and I came back, and I said to the children, "Now I'm going to see if I can catch this fish." And Adrian reached up and grabbed my hand before I made a cast, and he says, "This time, set the hook." So here he is, a 1st grader, telling a 94-year-old, "You'd better set the hook this time." So, yeah. So I do learn from so many. And then in the afternoon, when I did finally leave, and I did a demonstration, but I landed that fish, but I didn't catch any others. And the lady called me, and she says, "And little Nancy Jane caught 3 fish this afternoon, and little Betty Ann caught 2 nice trout, and little Charlie caught 4." And I'm saying, "Holy Jesus, these kids are out fishing me." So
I can understand your excitement too, going into that, because when you can bring value to other people, and it's fun to bring value to adults, but when you're bringing that to children that are so innocent and they're learning, it's
such a thrill.
To me, I haven't found anything more exhilarating or better in my life. So
Well, and that's sort of the direction that I'm thinking about going, and I want to be able to offer. I have such a unique piece of property.
Yes, you do.
And so I'm so fortunate to be able to offer that.
Yes.
And that's where I'm going with possibly doing a lodge, but to do the fundamentals of fishing.
Sure.
And so I'm hoping that through your guidance that
You'd better hurry up from the 94. I don't have more. I'm going down the other side of the mountain now. You better hurry up.
I understand, but you're still at the top. And
give me a shovel. I'll dig the first hole for you. Yeah.
But it's just that's the direction that
Good.
I really want to try to strive for, because I have the ponds.
Yeah, and you have the property.
And so that it's one of those things where we're just going to try to see where it takes us.
Yeah, I think that you'll be more than successful in that, because you're already, you're already on the way. You've already done this. And
Well, hospitality's been in my family for a long time. We, my grandfather and Matty Mateer had the corner room.
And that's where I have breakfast
Every morning.
every Friday morning.
Yep.
Every Friday. Yeah, we were there this morning.
Oh,
yeah.
good deal. Good
Eggs
deal.
Benedicts, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And
Delightful.
it's just so when it's hospitality, I guess, is in my blood, and so I'm really. I don't know how to say it, but I'm excited, and I'm not getting any younger, and I just want to do it now so that I can have it to leave a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
growing up, you grew up in this area, right? You've been a lot of different places. You've probably fished all over the place.
Well, I've been with the United States fly fishing teams in world championships in Finland, Italy, Ireland, Portugal, Wales. I've done a lot of fishing.
Oh, it's
And
impressive.
so, and the wonderful thing about that is, when you're fishing in different countries, and have so much competition, like you have 125 other anglers, and it's very, very, very competitive. But you meet so many people, it's a wonderful experience, and you learn so much from other men, how they fish, how they work a piece of water. And so it's been very beneficial to me over the years to have that experience.
right.
Mm-hmm.
A dear friend of mine is a guide down in the Bahamas, and I was fortunate enough to really go there since I was 4, 5, something like that. And Percy I invited him to be here for today, but I just wanted sort of the South and the North to meet, with Joe and Percy, and Percy fishes a lot of bonefish.
I think you caught a lot of bonefish down there.
Yes, sir.
didn't you?
Yes,
yeah.
sir. And so it just, all the avenues and the places that he's been. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and that's basically what I was going to get into, being part of a question. We were talking before we come on about living in this area and being in Pennsylvania, and how to you does the fishing in our area, how does it stack up compared to that of which throughout the rest of the United States?
It is premier. We have some of the finest streams in the country and the most challenging. These trout have been fished over hardly, and they're not easy.
Yeah, right.
And so it does present a challenge, and that leads on to when you're fishing, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to
Adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I've looked into some of the things that you've done in the past as far as like night fishing, right?
Yes.
Is that something that you still do?
Oh, yes. Yes, I still do it, and but I give a couple of little tips. When you night fish, you never go onto waters that you don't know, because you can lose your life.
Yeah.
You can step off a cliff. You don't know what you're getting into. So when I fish, I know exactly where I'm going. I know the depth of the water. I know where to wade and where not to wade. I know the width of the stream. I know how much line I'm going to need. I look at the far banks, and I see that the underhanging limbs, and when I get to that area, I start to adjust my casting to shorten to tighten up the loops to send my flies back under. So it's a study, but you better do it in the daytime. And so then I use big wet flies. I use the George Harvey winged wets, and then I have my own stonefly patterns that I go under with, and then I use on the surface, I go with a mouse. So I work back and forth, and I not only go with a mouse, but a lemming, another fly of that mouse nature. But so I go top and bottom, and I found that most of the time I catch my bigger fish. Like I have the state record still yet today, I think, on a fly-caught trout, a 16-pound, 34-inch fish out of Fishing Creek. So I understand the night game, and I love it because when you feel a fish take, when you first hook the fish, you're not sure whether it was 15 inches or 3 feet long.
Right.
And so that's always that thrill of the take.
Yeah.
And
Right,
so
right.
it keeps you coming back. Yeah.
And isn't it amazing, like even at nighttime,
Yes.
you know, especially with the brown trout, how they're feeding and how they can see
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pattern that you have
Yeah.
on a nymph.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Now, when you're out and you are fishing at night, do you run into catching more a certain species than other, like a brown trout? Or?
Well, browns are really great night feeders. Yeah. Yeah. So I catch more browns. But once in a while, I'll take rainbows, or depends what they stock. But once in a great while, I'll take a brook trout.
Yeah.
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 I was on Fishing Creek one night, and I was down in a chasm, and it was so dark, I would even lose my balance because I wasn't sure where I was. And I finally, I worked this patch of water, and I finally had a take, and I really hooked this fish, and I 10-inch brook trout on a big fly flew out of the water. So, yeah, the brook trout will take it nice too. Yeah.
Now, are you more prone to wanting to fish a bigger water, or do you like fishing a smaller water? I know myself, if I find some mountain laurel and it's a creek that I can dang near jump over, I'm giddy to get in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've done that, and I've done that in West Virginia, and I've done it in the Carolinas with small streams, but not here so much, is because I don't want to hurt the fish. I want to protect them, and you'll get some of your bigger brook trout doing that, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt them, so I kind of back off of that. But I love all kinds of water. Now I hired 2 guides to take me on the Madison at night. And I used the long line, which is a line that was invented for me by Cortland Line Company. Now it's the Europeans are using it, and they're calling it the Euro system. And so I created that system, but I used that after night on the Madison, and the guides were going crazy because I was taking so many fish that they never see in the daytime. And so I have fished our streams here at night. I've fished all over the country at night. I fished California at night when you were not supposed to. Yeah. And so I've done it, yeah.
You know, you have fished with a lot of different people. And is there certain individuals, you know, we were talking about George earlier, so I'm sure he's one of them, but is there certain individuals that stick out to you,
Yes.
or any funny stories that you have with some influential people?
Yeah. Ed Shank and I worked for 38 years together for the Allenberry Resort on the Yellow Breeches. And then we worked other clinics around different places together. And Ed was a real technician. He used the short rod. And I said to him one time, I said, "You're using a 6.5-foot rod or a 6-foot rod." And I said, "When I use a longer rod, I have so many more advantages because I can cover more water." I said I can lift my line over a lot of currents and get more time in productive areas. And I said, "Why do you use a short rod?" He says, "Because I simply enjoy it." He says, "I have fun with it, and I love it." And so, yes. Well, anyhow, a little short story about Ed. And he takes his son to church. And so, on the way home, they stop on the Latort. and he's going to have a sunfish. And so he says he rigs the rod up, and he takes his little boy to the stream, and he says, "Okay, now throw it in." And he took the rod and threw it in. So Ed said he had to take all his Sunday school suit off, down to his underwear, and crawl into the yellow breech or the Latort to get the rod out. Yeah, so that's a funny story.
That is a funny story.
And here's another little story. Ed was at Penn State, and he had a class, and the professor kept going on and on, and it was time to go, and everybody was antsy, and finally the professor held a leaf or something up, and he said, "And what do you think we should call this?" And Ed was in the back of the room, and he said, "Let's call it a day." So Ed had a great sense of humor. He was a great guy.
That is funny.
Well, tell us a little about Mr. Daniels.
Well, we're talking about people that have an impact on the fly fishing world today. George, we started to fish together. I think he was only maybe 16 years old. And he has come so far. And he's written a couple of books now. I think one on streamers, one on technique. But he has taken over the angling program at Penn State. Mm-hmm. And I am so proud and I am so pleased because he is doing such a wonderful job. And he has the technical flair that I had never had because it's a different age. And we didn't have the materials or the processes then that you do now. But right. George has been such a leader and such an inspiration to so many people and to so many programs. Mm-hmm. So he's doing a great job. And I
have yet to meet him.
Yeah,
so.
You're going to meet a wonderful boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so proud of him. So yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah. This is great. You have all these stories, Joe. I can't imagine even some of them that you can't think of at the moment. But
I have thousands.
We were talking about some of the places that you've been and you've seen, and what are some places that you have seen where, like you said, you always stop in that moment, but you just kind of just lost your breath. You've seen something and you're just like, I wish that this person was here with me to see this, or something you just simply can't believe with your eyes.
Yeah, well, an example like the Kitka, the river in Finland, and I was in competition, and I was working a patch of water, and I was catching grayling, and I caught 2 or 3 nice big grayling that sent me up with rather high in the scorecards, mm-hmm. But just the river itself just captivated me. It was so sure. Beautiful, mm-hmm. and the surroundings and wow, yeah. This is something, yeah.
My father was, latter part of his years took me to Norway, and we were fishing for Atlantic salmon. We were on the Storen River, and that was just something that I don't know. It was neat mm-hmm. to be able to be there with my father, and then we stayed along a hotel right along the stream, and I looked at my dad one day and I said, I'm going to climb that mountain. And the next day I ended up going up and I climbed the mountain. Mm-hmm. But I told him I was going to go to this one peak, and I didn't make it to that peak. I went even further up, and so I didn't know how to show where I was. So I had a Penn State shirt on, and I took it off, and I put it over a branch, and I hung it up in the tree so you could see it from the hotel down there. And sure enough, you could. It was really, that was a fun trip, yeah. And the river was just beautiful, but the scenery was even more spectacular.
I'm going to tell you a story about your grandfather.
Okay.
Don Kepler had him up in the mountains on a mountain stream, and they were going around under the laurel, and a big water snake dropped down off the laurel across your grandfather's back.
Oh,
He threw his fly rod down. He threw everything down, and he ran out of there. And yet today, I might go back up that stream and try to find that fly rod.
oh no
It's still
kidding.
there.
Oh, my. Oh.
They never went back after it.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
That we just were talking the other day with a friend of mine and I and Chris Kepler, and my dad just thought the world of that man. I mean, he started the Fireside books, correct? Mm-hmm. Is that, I don't know. I just wanted to, but Don Kepler was a
pretty guy.
pretty neat guy. Yeah. So, but a lot of history. Thank you for saying that about my grandfather, because I got some old pictures.
But not only is that fly rod, I think 3/4 of his equipment's still there.
Well, I just found his fly box the other day that I have. So,
Okay.
But
Anything else,
Yeah,
Marcus?
Joe. I mean, I could pick your brain for hours. Honest to God, I could sit here all night because
Good.
I'm just a BSer, and
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why my wife said, podcasting would be great for you because that's all you do is talk. And when we go somewhere, and it's time to leave, like I never just disappear. I don't pull a Houdini. She has to tell me an hour and a half before we leave because it's going to take me an hour and a half to say goodbye to everybody. Mm-hmm. And
I would like to take you down and show you my stream, my camp. If you got a couple of minutes, we could just go down. And
Afterwards, we're down here. Yeah, we can do that.
So I just, it's neat to have you here.
Well, Marcus, let me just give you another 10-second story.
yeah,
I love the stories, though.
I do too.
A guy by the name of Paul Blankenhorn that was instrumental in helping me with diverting the big spring back around the duck pond. And that was a great, we really saved Spring Creek by doing it. But I was fishing with him, and we were on Penn's Creek and we were nymphing, and I was told him about leader adjustment and what it meant to catching fish. And so we were fishing, and I was catching fish, and he was just learning, and he was kind of a neophyte, and he was having some problems, but he was doing okay. And then, after a while, I sat down on the bank and I was watching him, and he was doing well. And then I started to fish with him again, and he started to catch fish, and I couldn't catch any fish. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, what is happening? You're the expert. This guy doesn't, he's a neophyte, he's learning, but he can't outfish you, but he is. He's catching 2 fish or 3 fish to every one you catch. And so, finally I said to him, Paul, sit down with me a minute and tell me what you're doing. I said, is it the fly? Did you change flies? And he says, no, I have the same flies that we started with. And I said, why are you catching fish? And he looked at my leader and he said, you know what you told me. You have to adjust the tippet to this length to be able to get your flies down. And look at your tippet. You've changed flies so many times, you shortened the tippet, and your tippet's too short. If you lengthen your tippet, you might catch more fish. And I did, and I started to catch more fish. So here is a neophyte, a guy that is just learning to teach the old man.
Yep.
Yeah. So
you're never too young to learn.
We're never too young to learn, that's for sure.
Yep.
I know I learn stuff every day, every single day of my life, to be honest. But fly fishing it's really a lifelong pursuit, and there's endless opportunities for learning and growth, as you just touched on. What would you say are some key lessons, right? Something that really stands out, or insights that you've gained from everything in your journey, and how have they translated not only into fly fishing but into maybe other parts of your life?
Well, one of the things that people have to learn is basically line control. That is in casting and on the water, and that's what we learn in life. We learn through life. We make mistakes, just like line control, and we learn to adjust, and that's life.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that line control in my everyday life. It's true.
Yep.
Very true.
Line control.
And, you were touching on whenever we first started talking how fishing has enabled you to release or, kind of flutter away and get anything that you have on your mind or off your chest and come back with a clear head. Right?
Yes.
And
So, it's the not only the fish you pursue, it's the environment you're in. But being fishermen, and we're trying to catch the trout, and he is not always very willing to be got, and so we have to adjust, and so we have to maybe work with different flies. We have to adjust our leader, and we might have to adjust our leader for the depth and speed of the water. We might have to add weight. We might have to adjust our weights different ways. We might have to place our flies on the leader at different places. This is all problem solving. And so this is what we do, and this is why you no longer think about your problems.
Right.
You're thinking about solving your problems.
Yeah, I think that something that would be really easy to do, I don't think would do what fly fishing in particular, does for the mind, right? Because whenever you do get involved and you do harder stuff, when you land that fish that you work for so hard, it's a lot more rewarding.
It is. Yes, no doubt about it.
Or
Yes.
even if you don't land a fish all day and you're just out in the water, it's still a really good
you're
day.
right.
And
Well, George Harvey said, when you're fishing all day and you don't catch a fish, and then and you say, well, as you did, it doesn't make any difference. And George says, that's bull. He says, if you don't catch a fish all day, then you're nothing, and it means nothing.
Yeah, what do they say?
And somebody asked him about, strike indicators, and he says, if you're a bobber fisherman, he said, then you're a bobber fisherman. And they said, you haven't learned anything from childhood. If you fish a bobber, you're not a fisherman. You're just a kid fishing a bobber.
That's funny.
He says, so he never used a strike indicator, nor do I ever. I never have,
And I think with that, I am not the most experienced fly fisherman. I have really, the last 2 years, said, this is all I'm going to do with it, and really self-taught and trying to learn stuff. But I have went that route. I am very stubborn with it, but I'm just going to not use an indicator.
Yes.
And I think that will make
if you
a better
follow your
fisherman.
leader, you don't need an indicator.
Well, Kevin's always saying to me, mend your line, so it's, yeah.
But, fly fishing, it requires a lot of patience and perseverance, right?
Yes.
You could be casting and that dang tree got you, and then you retie or you untie the knot that you just did, and you go to cast again, and the same damn tree got you again, right? And so you can really get.
And at 94, it happens to me more than I'd like. Yeah. Or I cast just a tad a little farther, and it's on a tree.
Right.
And you adjust.
Yeah.
But not until you break off the leader, have to retie the whole dang thing, and you've lost 2 or 3 flies, and now you have to, before you can fish again, and the pattern you really would like to fish with, you better go home and tie one because you've emptied your box.
Right.
What are some of the most memorable moments that are at the top of your head in your fishing adventures? Like maybe not only just the size of a fish, but maybe you had a long day And towards the end of the day, you did that one more cast. I always tell myself when I'm going fishing, I'll say, well, I'll work my way up here, and then I'll one more cast. Well, that one more cast turns into 10 more casts, and then my phone's ringing, and my wife says, hey, it's time to go home.
Yeah.
But what are some of the most, I guess, memorable moments that come to your mind when you are or have been out fishing?
Okay, I'm a little boy. I think I'm pretty good with wet flies. I'm 15 years old, and there might have been a better fisherman in this world, but I doubted it because I thought I was pretty good. So I was fishing wet flies, and the dam was at Rock. Rock is a big outcropping in Spring Creek, and back in then, a dam was made for a mill back in the 1700s, and it backed the water up. And there's a fisherman fishing, and I had fished by him, and I sat down and was watching him catch fish. And I didn't catch any fish, but this guy was catching fish. And I was so frustrated. And finally I went to the man and I said, what are you fishing? And he said, I'm fishing wet flies. I said, you couldn't be fishing wet flies and catching fish because I'm fishing wet flies and I'm not catching any fish. And he said to me, he says, yes, son. He says, you fished by me and I watched you fish, and you were using downfish techniques, and you were moving your flies and downing them across the stream. But he says these fish don't want the flies moving down across. He says these fish want them coming drifting naturally over them. So you throw straight upstream and watch your leader, and they'll come up on a natural drift, and it has to be a natural drift, and they're sucking the fly in. That's why I'm catching fish than you aren't, because they want the fly coming to them naturally. So here I am as a child. Here is a guy that took the time to tell me what he was doing and how to do it. And it was a great, big, wonderful happening in my life, because I learned now there was another way to fish wet fly. And so, yeah.
That's cool.
So these are experiences I've had with other people that have shared with me, that,
Right.
and so many times.
Right.
Yeah.
And the wonderful part of all that is when we pass down the knowledge that we have, then it should get passed down again, right?
Yes.
And that's why I hope that, everybody says, it starts with the kids and you need to teach the youth, and that is true. But also at the same time, I feel like adults kind of get they have a pride within them where they don't want to ask for help, or they're afraid to do something, which fly fishing can be really intimidating to a lot of people because they see all these knots that we're tying, or they see us trying to, match a hatch or something, and you're lifting them rocks. What are you looking for, right?
Yeah.
Or doing whatever we can to try to find what the fish will hit on. And I think that the more that we put out there, and the more that something like this show or some other things that you're involved with by taking veterans and stuff, that gets the word out that we're all normal human beings and we're not doing anything that's that crazy, but you just got to get out there and try.
Well, one of the things now, we have so many avenues to share our techniques and to enhance fly fishermen today. But in my day, your best fishermen were very secretive. They didn't want to tell you anything. I've got it. I've learned it. And I don't want any competition.
Right.
And so see how it has changed over my lifetime, where people didn't want to help. Now there's so many avenues of good help, with videos, with DVDs, and what you're doing now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Marcus,
Yeah.
and what you're doing now.
Right.
With the podcast. Yes.
And what's great about all the stuff that we can do for people is nowadays with this stuff is this stuff is a digital footprint that's here long after we're gone.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
But it's still hard to beat the hands-on lessons or a sit-down like this and to be there and be part of everything. But
the thing that one of the things that I think that I'm being an old man, and I see so many people casting, and they use the tended to, and the tended to is what everybody is learning from and by. But my casting and what I believe catches far more fish is the very short stroke.
Right.
Elbow in, and it's wrist and wrist. So I stop the rod straight up and down, and then it's wrist. And this wrist gives me the slack leader cast for dry flies. It gives me the tuck cast for nymphing. It gives me the downer and upper for nymphing. It gives me all kinds of techniques and it gives me distance, and I can go under brush with this stroke. Mm-hmm. And this is why I became a top gun in the brush. I think at one time I don't think anybody could have ever beat me in the brush. So yeah. Right. Here's another funny story, and this is of George Harvey. And we were doing a clinic in South Williamsport, and
go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry for interrupting.
And this guy was trying to impress George Harvey with how adept he was in the mountain streams. So he said to George, he said, every year on the mountain streams, he says, I wear a pair of knees out on my hip boots because I get down so I can fish. And George Harvey says, that's because you don't know how to cast.
That's funny.
So how many years did you fish with George then?
Oh, for years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that your main fishing buddy for the longest time?
Oh, he was a good fishing buddy.
Yeah. Did you guys do a lot of traveling? Were you on the team together?
No? George never went into competition. He didn't believe in competition.
Right. He wanted to fish.
He just wanted to fish. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I can understand that.
But George, through his classes, just think, he started angling classes at Penn State in 1932. There was just some students, but mostly profs, that wanted to learn. And then he taught them fly tying and techniques. But then in 1947, it became an accredited course. And then it got a lot of national prominence, like through Life magazine, Collier's, Saturday Evening Post. Both those magazines are gone. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and but it it exploded nationally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When do you think, in your views, like when you were young, fly fishing probably wasn't the most popular thing?
But it was. One thing that you don't think about, Fisherman's Paradise was here. It was the first all fly fishing program in the United States. Mm-hmm. And it started in 1942 and ended in 1956 with the pollution. But all of those years, we had, for instance, on May the 15th, on the opening day of fly fishing, and then ended July 31st, May the 15th to July 31st. It started at 9 in the morning and ended at 9 at night. And a siren blew. It was 1 mile of stream. You could hear the siren, okay? And on May the 15th, and I don't remember what year, but I bicycled from State College, and I finally got down to Fisherman's Paradise, and the line was so long that I finally got registered, and then I couldn't find a place to fish, and It was shoulder to shoulder. There were 3,000 fishermen in that 1 mile of stream. And so I saw an old man standing on a rock that was slanted. So I went behind him and sat down, waited. I said, he's going to give out. And he did. And when he jumped off the rock, I jumped on. That's how crowded it was. And so that was Fisherman's Paradise.
Yeah.
But everybody was fishing streamers, and it was stocked maybe twice a week. And there were thousands of people fishing. But they used streamers and big flies to get the big fish. But I had all those years found that freshwater shrimp and crest bugs was what they liked. And so I tied a fox fur nymph and on an 18 hook, and I pulled the guard hairs down and trimmed them, and it just looked like a little shrimp. And I sight fished, and I caught fish after fish, and it got so that people were watching me. And what happened, they tried to catch my line with theirs. They did everything to see what I was fishing with. And when I would catch a fish, I would take the fly out of its mouth, hold it in my hand, and run. And I had people behind me like the Pied Piper, with people running up the bank trying to find out what I was doing. And I was only 16, 17 years old. And I had the key right there in my hand. And I was doing a clinic on the Rose River with the veterans. And a man came to me and he said, you did something for me that I never forgot. He said, my father was at Fisherman's Paradise, and he couldn't catch any fish. And he was so frustrated. And you came to him and helped him catch fish with that nymph. And he said, my father was so appreciative. And he said, neither of us ever forgot you. And so after all those years, that came back to me. So you never know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, that's just that. Yeah, it's the pay it forward thing.
Yeah.
You know, and,
Yes.
and I believe, people talk about karma. I believe in that. I really think it's a real thing, and I think that if you're a good person, good things come to you.
Good things come.
You know.
Yeah.
But the Fisherman's Paradise, that was there. What are some other changes that you've seen in the fly fishing culture, whether they be good or bad throughout the years?
Well, we've had so many. We've learned from the Europeans, but we've had so many techniques of our own. Using the long leader now with two-weighted flies. They call it the Euro system. There are streamer techniques now where you're mending the line, holding your streamers on the far side of the stream. There's so much to it that we're learning and we're adjusting. But I believe that if we look back into time, we can learn more from the old timers than we can today. Remember, the old timers shot that line with their bait straight upstream, had line control, tipped down to the water, fished it down through, let it swing, and followed the swing. And once it swung down below, they lifted and dropped it, and lifted and dropped it, and then finally lifted it slowly. These were techniques that now we're thinking about, we're reinventing stuff that was done years ago.
Yeah.
They had the line control. They had bottom control. They had weight control and techniques of lifting and dropping.
Yeah, so I mean, it really hasn't changed that much, though. We're still all trying to catch trout, right?
And so Ed Shank and I were one day on the Yellow Breeches, and a little girl was only 14 years old, and she was out fishing us. She was out fishing everybody. And we didn't know. And so I finally said to the little girl, and Ed was right with me, "What fly are you using?" And she showed us the fly. It was it wasn't anything special. And so I said, "You're catching all of these fish." And she said, "Yes. When I fish a pocket, I let the fly lay. Then I lift it up. And that's when they hit it. And then I drop it. If they don't hit it, then I drop it. And then I lift it slowly again." And he says, "It's on the lift they take." So here we are, the old timers. They let the fly, their bait, sink. And then they slowly lifted it. And that's when they got hit. Or they dropped it again. It comes back. And here this little girl came back with the same technique that our grandfathers were using and out fishing us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
pretty cool.
Isn't that neat?
You know, I honestly do appreciate it. Like when I am out on the stream, or if I'm even on a lake fishing with my dad or something, and I see a young kid that's just killing it. Like it's really fun. You just want to set your rod down and just watch.
Yeah.
And ask them, where did you learn that? Where did you, and it's usually either, hey, I've been coming here every day. I ride my bike from school or whatever, and I fish till dark or whatever. Or it's, my pap or my dad or something, somebody, like we were talking about before, somebody mentored them and passed down something that's really.
That's what I loved about Whiter on the fly. I mean, I get to watch all these people.
Yeah, sure you
and
do.
you see so much experience.
Yeah.
I mean, it just was mesmerizing.
I have another story on it. Here we are at the Yellow Breeches again, and we have a class. And this little girl, she had wild hair. It stuck straight up in the air, and it was all over his head. And she had these neophyte waders on, and they were, I forget, but she was just a small girl. And she was catching fish after fish. And what she was doing, she would just let her fly hang straight downstream and just move the rod over to the right and then over to the left. And she was just fishing behind this boulder, and these fish were laying in behind that velocity change. And she was catching fish after fish. And finally she said, "Oh, I'm sick of this." And she says, "I'm going to go watch television." And we were all so happy to see her go because she was beating the hell out of us.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful sport, and I really hope that more people can get involved in it. And, I want to go back just to what we were talking about as far as some things that you've seen change and in the fly fishing. In our state of Pennsylvania, and maybe even in this area, what do you believe are some things that we are doing very well? And then also on the contrary.
Well, yeah, we're probably nymphing better than we ever have. And I have always, with nymphing, worked with what was happening down below and what was under the rocks or what was the natural food chain. But now they're coming up with very small hooks with a bead head with nothing but tinsel on them and out fishing everybody.
Right.
What is it about that damn thing, that little bead on that little hook with a little bit of tinsel wrapped around it? Why is it out fishing everybody?
Right.
And so I was down at Fisherman's Paradise, and this guy said, no wonder, I'm fishing a crest bug, which is down there, but they didn't want it. And I couldn't understand why they didn't want it. So he said, try this. And he gave me one of these little stupid things.
Tungsten.
Yeah. And I fished it, but it didn't do any good. And then I was down here not all that long ago, and the boy from Pittsburgh, the name, he's an outstanding fisherman. And he said to me, he said, we'll use a dropper, the hopper dropper type of thing. And he said, and then he put one of those damn little things on, and I caught 2 trout. So
On the same cast?
yeah,
Okay.
not on the same cast, but on 2 different casts. Yeah.
Okay.
Josh Miller. Yeah.
I know who that is.
He's a fine young fisherman.
Now, we were talking about some of the things that we do well, and you're talking about technique, but what are some things that you think are a problem in our area, whether that be littering or any types of pollution?
Well, what was so sad is our university polluted the stream in 1956 with sodium cyanide, and it wiped the whole stream out to Bellefonte. And it's taken years for it to come back. And when I was a boy, we had a great green drake hatch. It'll never be there again because even they're trying to recreate it, we don't have the water quality.
Right.
So these are some of the things, and it's been so sad. That was carelessness, and that was stupidity, and so it changed Spring Creek forever.
Forever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that should be watched and looked upon, as far as even we're going to put a parking lot here, or we're going to put something here, and the way that we change the wastewater,
Yes.
is something that has to be looked at. Especially, I want to catch brook trout for the most part. I appreciate brown trout, and I like catching rainbows, but when I catch a brook trout, I'm more connected to it. I'm more excited about it, and those fish are probably about the most tainty and finicky fish around.
Yeah.
So as soon as you...
Well, for instance, what we can do here at State College, we did divert Thompson Spring around the duck pond, and it changed Spring Creek forever for the betterment. But we have all of the storm sewer runoff coming directly into the duck pond, which goes right into Spring Creek. So we have to treat the storm sewer runoff coming in here. But we can't convince anybody yet.
Right.
That's the university, and that's State College Borough, and they have to cooperate, and they have to understand, but they don't. It's not their problem.
Right.
They don't think about what it could do for Spring Creek. So these are the things. When I saw when the highway pushed Thompson Spring into the duck pond, it not only warmed it up, but there was nothing but pollution.
Right.
And Spring Creek for miles went straight downhill. Water temperatures would go up to 80s. Never in Spring Creek's history did it ever do that.
Right.
And so I said, this was such a wonderful experience in my life. This gave me my life. And I'm not gonna see it go downhill. And so I sat down with 5 other guys, and we formed Trout Unlimited, and we reconverted that damn spring around the duck pond.
Yeah. Now, what is like the normal average water temperature now that we were able to
Spring
do
Creek was probably in the 60s. It probably might be in the high 60s at its warmest.
Right.
Yeah. Because we still have springs feeding it.
Right.
Yeah.
some underground?
Yeah, we have a lot of springs. Yeah. Even the big spring at Rock that is now feeding Benner Springs Hatchery. That still is coming out of the hatchery, but it's still cold water. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, that's what makes this area so good.
Now, when I was a kid, that big spring went straight into Spring Creek. And when I would fish it with wet flies early in the morning as a kid, I could take brook trout where the big spring dropped into Spring Creek. And so I would always make a point to fish there, because then I could get 2 or 3 nice big brook trout to take home. You know.
Yeah.
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 Gotta have that sandwich.
Yep. And not only then, but you know, after in 1929, my dad had a job in the bank, and the bank everything folded, and we went into the Depression. And what you caught and what you shot is what you ate.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was different in those days. We were fighting for survival.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we never have to go back to those days.
Let's
but,
hope. Thank God.
you know.
Yes, please. Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
also can't put a price on being able to know this and
Yes.
have this knowledge
Yes.
of being able to catch wild trout and
Yes.
I mean even stock trout, but being able to catch trout and understanding the way that fish move about the streams.
Yeah. And you know what? I think there's a wonderful program now. We have trout in the classroom, and they're teaching these children from an egg to a viable trout, and then they put them in the stream, and they follow their progress, and they learn conservation, and they learn how to keep our streams clean, and you know they learn so much. So
That's why we gotta keep the education coming.
Yeah, that's why we do. Yeah.
And that's the goal, the ultimate goal.
Well, Marcus, we did it.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Thank you, Joe.
Is there anything else that you need?
Joe, like I told you, I could talk to you for hours. I just want to look through here. I wrote a couple notes down as we were talking, but you know, you've left a great legacy upon those that have choose to fish this area, really. And you know, what are some things that you think that we could also help with that you've started moving forward? You know, we were talking about the cleanup of Spring Creek.
Yes.
You know, is there any other things that you'd like to touch on as far as maybe local programs or anything that people could look into to spend some spare time with or help out with?
Well, you know, Trout Unlimited is working to enhance our streams and with planting trees, with picking up trash, different things, but they're very concerned with water quality also, and the Clear Water Conservancy. And we have programs now that are really concerned about our environment.
Right.
And really helping us. So in my day, there wasn't any need for
Protection for
protection,
the waters.
yeah, because nothing was bothering it. Yeah.
We weren't putting a gas station in a
That's
parking
right.
lot in a mall in every
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
We're having
Yeah. You know, in
trains
fact,
derail or
yeah,
anything
right.
like that.
And when you know, when I was a child, and before World War II, and after 1941, gas was rationed, and we didn't have that many people on the road or on the stream.
Right.
Yeah, so I had these streams to myself basically. Yeah. Now here's I'm going to give you 2 funny stories, and I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do this. Okay. In Fisherman's Paradise, you couldn't fish on Sundays. And so the tourists came Sundays to see all the fish. And they would stand on the bridges and feed the big trout bread. But then Monday morning when the claxton blew, these guys tied white deer hair flies. They packed white deer flies, so there was your breadcrumb. And so when the siren blew at 9 o'clock, guys on both sides of the stream were firing their breadcrumb flies, and all those big fish were going for them. And there was one hell of a tangle, and everybody was cussing everybody else out. And they say, "You son of a bitch, you threw over me," you know. Yeah. And it was that. It was chaotic, but it was the funniest thing in the world. And then the green drake hatch was on. Okay. Now the claxton blew at 9 in the evening, and when it blew, it's done. You had to go off the stream, go register, sign out, and go. So the green drake hatch is on, and these big fish are sucking them in right at the edge of darkness at 9 o'clock. And these guys would hook these big fish, the fish of a lifetime. I've never had a fish like this in my life. I've got to land it. The siren blows. They had to break them off and go sign up.
Wow.
And there were so many. I think there were tears.
Yeah.
Grown men crying.
Yeah. Grown men crying. Yeah.
I have lost some very large fish in my life, and I will say that they stick with you.
Well, I've lost 2 that I think would have been world records type on a fly. So I'm going back the 3rd time.
Yeah.
One more time.
Where are you heading to?
It'll be Arkansas on the Little Red.
Little Red River.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. I was filming with the American Sportsman. What?
John Wilson?
No. Well, John Wilson was there, but I was fishing with a national program. And I hooked a fish that was absolutely huge. He would have gone maybe 38 pounds. Absolutely. He was that big and that long.
That's filmed, correct?
Huge. And
don't they have a film of that?
I had him right in front of me, and then the hook pulled out. So it was just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So, and when we were filming the story on Live the Stream, and again on a sculpin pattern, and I was working it on the bottom, and this big fish grabbed it. I never saw the fish. I never got him off the bottom. I never even got his head up. He went for a brush pile and broke me off. So those are 2 big fish. Yeah.
It's funny though too. I know the feeling of getting those big brown trout on, and the feeling that I've had from them is, it's like as soon as they grab it, it's like they don't want to roll, they don't want to come to the top, but they take it straight down to the bottom, and it's like they want to stick to the bottom.
Sometimes they do, and sometimes they go zoom.
Yeah.
They take off. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Joe, I want to thank you so much. This is really awesome. I really appreciate all the stories and all the knowledge that you have, and Randy, I can't
thank you.
I can't thank you
Thank
enough
you,
either.
Randy.
And this was great. I really enjoyed this. I hope to keep in touch with you and
Yes.
have a phone call with you every once in a
Yes.
while and just check in. So
You bet.
We'll do it again.
You bet. Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Marcus.